The paper was heavier than it looked. Real parchment linen weight, embossed with the gold crest of Whitmore Family Holdings. Across the middle, printed in deep red ink, ran a single line that caught the light like a wound, spousal designation removed per image realignment. My name wasn't even blacked out. It had been deleted entirely, as if it had never existed. I set the document down on the glass table in the dining room, the sound of the paper meeting crystal sharp as a gunshot. The chandelier scattered the red letters across crystal and glass. Around me. Everything gleamed the silver cutlery, the untouched champagne flutes, the empty seats reserved for a celebration I was no longer welcome to attend. The gala invitation lay beside the amendment. It bore a single embossed name, Ethan Whitmore. No and guest. No Mrs., just him. My phone buzzed. Then again. Then constantly the tight vibration of a device choking on messages. Board members, PR directors, the investor relations team. All of them pinging the same thread I'd been removed from last week, gala protocol confirmation. I didn't open them. I just stared at the trust amendment again, my reflection bending around its edge, somewhere between the legalese and the signature line. My 7 years of building something alongside Ethan had turned into a liability to be managed. He'd said it so easily that morning. You shouldn't come tonight. Claire. It's not personal, it's optics. You've been out of the company for a year. These are new investors, an international crowd. I need the image clean. The words had landed with surgical precision, practiced in front of mirrors and media coaches. I laughed quietly. Without humor? Optics? I repeated. And what do I represent? Exactly. He'd adjusted his cufflinks. Platinum. Gift from his mother. History, he said. And history can be complicated. That was the moment I knew he wasn't just distancing himself, he was erasing me. When he left for a final rehearsal at the Fairmont Ballroom, I walked through our penthouse, the one we'd leased to impress investors when we couldn't yet afford the furniture. On the counter sat the seating chart for the gala. I ran my finger down the alphabetized list: executives, spouses, advisors, family representatives, Whitmore, Ethan, table 1, Whitmore, Margaret, table 1. And then nothing. No Claire. Not even an empty space where my name should have been. I remember the stillness in the room, the hum of the refrigerator, the echo of my own breath. It wasn't anger that rose first. It was disbelief clean. Crystalline disbelief that someone could rewrite reality with a single document and a confident tone. The amendment had arrived by courier an hour later. Routine estate planning update, the assistant said, smiling like it was a flower delivery. I'd signed a dozen such packets over the years, trust distributions, escrow renewals, tax shelters, but this one, wrapped in gold ribbon, had weight, inside, 1 page, no explanation, just that single red line and a digital timestamp bearing my forged initials. I felt the air change. Outside. The late afternoon sun slipped behind the skyline, the light thinning into copper streaks across the bay. The city was preparing to toast my husband's success story, the self-made visionary, the golden boy of tech. They'd never see the scaffolding beneath my spreadsheets, my contacts, my compromises. I picked up the amendment again and tilted it under the light until the red ink glowed like something alive. My thumb brushed over Ethan's signature, precise, deliberate, the ink barely dry. You always did love your penmanship. I murmured. The phone kept buzzing. The screen filled with banners press RSVPs, last-minute logistics, the kind of noise that precedes a storm. I silenced it, set it face down next to the amendment, and poured myself a glass of the champagne meant for tonight. The bubbles hissed in the silence, in the reflection of the window. The city glittered buildings like polished trophies stacked against the dusk. Somewhere down there, he was rehearsing a speech I'd helped him write years ago. Vision, values, integrity. I still remembered the rhythm, the pauses crafted for applause. A message slid across the dark phone screen before it went black again. Investor shuttle delayed. Board waiting. Press holding for family photo. Family photo. I almost laughed. I walked to the table, took the amendment and the seating chart, and aligned them perfectly, 2 artifacts of erasure displayed side by side. The paper caught the light like polished armor, for a second. I imagined sliding both into a frame and hanging them above the mantel, the night I disappeared politely. Then I whispered to the empty room, calm and clear. As if narrating a contract clause, he told me I didn't fit his circle, so I left. And that was the last decision he ever made without me. The words felt like a line being drawn, not shouted, just signed. I slipped the amendment into my leather portfolio, zipped it shut, and glanced once more at the phone. It vibrated again, persistent this time. Notifications stacked faster than I could ignore them. Then one froze my hand, midair, urgent. Investor walkout. The screen flickered, then went dark. Somewhere in the city. Champagne glasses were freezing mid-toast, and for the first time in a year. I smiled. If you were Claire, would you confront him now or sign your own clause and walk away? Comment below. The skyline of Seattle shimmered below our penthouse windows. A collage of glass and ambition reflected in the bay, from up here. The city looked obedient, lights flickering like data points across a spreadsheet I'd once controlled, behind me. The Whitmore family dinner was already in motion, a quiet prelude to the gala that would define Ethan's new era. A dining table gleamed with crystal and white roses, more exhibit than meal, imported white roses arranged in disciplined symmetry. Every detail had been planned for optics, the same word Ethan used now instead of truth. I moved through the space silently, half guest, half ghost. The penthouse smelled of bergamot and polished ambition. Ethan's mother, Margaret, presided at the head of the table in a navy silk gown that whispered wealth. His father, Charles, swirled scotch with the ease of someone who'd never poured his own drink. Claire, Margaret said. Her tone clipped but civil. You'll be comfortable tomorrow, won't you? I assume you have plans elsewhere while the gala's underway? It was phrased like concern, but landed like a dismissal. I do, I said evenly, folding my napkin. I'll be watching the sunset. A tiny smile flickered on her face, confusion. Maybe pity. The conversation shifted back to seating charts, investor arrivals, and the museum's art curation for the event. They spoke about the company as if it were a living deity requiring careful worship. I had built half that deity from scratch. Before the boardrooms. Nexus Edge was a garage and 2 laptops. I was the strategist, not the spouse. I designed the pitch decks, negotiated the seed funding, built the first revenue model that carried us through the drought. Every contract we signed in those early years bore traces of my handwriting, neat, structured, impossible to ignore. Margaret called it repositioning. I called it erasure. Within a year, PR turned me from co-founder into an early consultant. By Series C, I was a footnote dressed as a wife, and I let it happen. Thinking love didn't need credit, I was wrong. The elevator chimed behind me, breaking the memory. Lydia Chen stepped out, HR director, my old colleague from McKenna Consulting, now working at Nexus Edge. She gave me a look that carried both apology and warning. Claire, she whispered when we crossed paths near the kitchen, I shouldn't be here long. The board dinner's in an hour. Still cleaning up his messes, I asked quietly. She gave a tight smile. Always. Listen, call me tomorrow. There's something you should see. Before I could ask. Margaret's voice cut through the room like a bell. Lydia, so good of you to drop by. Tell your team we're thrilled about the new leadership packet. Lydia nodded, her face polite, eyes darting once toward me. Then she was gone. At the far end of the table, Ethan was laughing with Helena Kraus, the German fund partner, whose name commanded half the tech headlines this quarter. Helena's posture was impeccable, her gaze direct, her tone precise. A woman who'd clawed her way through European venture boards by being sharper than anyone allowed her to be. I'd admired her once. When I still sat in those meetings. Now. She was looking at Ethan with mild amusement as he gestured through a story I'd heard him practice. We built the platform from a vision of integration, not disruption. He still used that pronoun in public, as if I were included in his collective memory. Yet tomorrow, he'd walk into a ballroom where my name was literally redacted from our founding trust. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so clean. After dinner, I escaped to the balcony overlooking Elliott Bay. The air was cold, briny, alive. From here, the museum lights glimmered across the water, readying for the gala strings of gold against steel blue twilight, Maya Brooks called as if on cue. Her voice burst through the Bluetooth speaker, fast and furious. "You still awake? Genius." I'm surrounded by crystal and self-congratulation. What do you think? Maya laughed. So, same as 2018. Listen, I've been hearing chatter. Nexus Edge might be announcing a merger tomorrow night. You know anything about that? I froze. A merger? No. Ethan said it was just investor expansion. Then someone's lying, because the documents say structural consolidation. Guess whose name isn't on the draft agreement? My silence answered for me. Maya's tone softened. Claire, I know you don't like the spotlight, but if he's using your work again, you deserve to know before it hits the press. I'm past deserving, I said quietly. Now I'm documenting. After the call, I stood there a while longer, watching the lights ripple across the bay. My reflection in the glass looked calm, but my pulse drummed against the stem of the wine glass I was still holding. Inside. Laughter rose again, the kind of laughter that carries power, the sound of people who believe the narrative belongs to them. I used to believe that too, that if you built something solid enough financial models, marriage vows, a company charter it would hold. But stories, I was learning, were as malleable as ink. In the reflection, the city blurred with the stars. And for a moment, I saw it the woman I used to be, hunched over spreadsheets at 2 a.m., building the scaffolding of a future that now had my name carved out of it. I whispered it once, just to hear how it sounded. The world I built still stands. He just doesn't realize who's holding the foundation. Behind me. The laughter quieted. Margaret's voice again, sharp as glass. Make sure tomorrow runs perfectly. Ethan, optics are everything. I smiled into the night. Optics, I thought. Let's adjust the lens. And in the dark reflection, a plan began to form clean, silent, paper-bound. The first odd thing was an email that shouldn't have reached me. It came through my old Nexus Edge Founders alias, one I hadn't used in a year. One that IT should have deactivated when Ethan's PR team rolled out the streamlined narrative. Yet somehow. My address still lingered in a forgotten distribution list. Subject line, Gala Agenda, Final Approval Internal Only. The attachment opened automatically on my laptop, the screen lighting the dark apartment in cool blue. Names, titles, table numbers clean, symmetrical columns. Ethan at table 1, Margaret and Charles Whitmore beside the European investors, the CFO. And someone labeled Family Advisor, Image Support. My name was gone, even as I stared at the spreadsheet. Part of me waited for the cursor to blink me back into existence, but there was only the quiet hum of the air conditioner and the faint taste of irony on my tongue. Below the seating chart, a line item caught my eye. Budget Addendum. Image Optimization. Legacy Announcement. $185,000. It wasn't a small number, enough for an ad campaign, or a narrative rewrite. I scrolled further, looking for a note, something to explain legacy announcement. But it was blank. I called Ethan. He didn't pick up. A few minutes later, a text arrived instead. Running rehearsals. Everything's fine. Don't overthink it. That was his new tone, measured, professional, as if we were on opposite sides of a quarterly review. A second message followed. This one from Margaret. No surprises tomorrow. Dear, optics are delicate right now. Delicate optics. Her euphemism for stay invisible. I closed the laptop. But the phrase family advisor kept echoing. Margaret had been grooming her friend Victoria, an old money socialite who spoke in portfolios and power plays. I could already imagine the photo ops Ethan framed between his mother and Victoria, the perfect tableau of generational wealth. The skyline we once shared now looked owned by someone else. Now, it just looked like someone else's property. The next morning, I made coffee and opened my inbox again. Overnight, a courier email had landed from Whitmore Family Office. Marked urgent. Attached trust update. Estate planning. No explanation, no cover note. Just a request for e-signature confirmation. It was the same template I'd seen before, but something in me stalled. My index finger hovered over the approval field while my other hand scrolled down the legal text. I'd signed countless documents for Ethan updates, tax adjustments, trust reallocations, but this one felt repurposed. I read line by line until I reached Section 3B, beneficiary designation. There it was. Hidden beneath a wall of text, primary beneficiary status to be adjusted in accordance with current image realignment and corporate positioning strategy. Corporate positioning strategy? I stared at the words. Their absurdity almost elegant. I wasn't a partner, a co-founder, a wife. I was a positioning liability. I clicked decline signature and forwarded the email to my private account. By noon. Ethan called. "Did you get the update from the family office?" he asked. Voice carefully neutral. I did. I said, "It's interesting legal phrasing, especially for estate planning." He hesitated. "It's just structural cleanup. The PR advisors want consistency across documents in case the press digs into our filings. You know how that goes." "Do I, Claire?" "Please. This is administrative. Not personal." The line crackled. I could almost hear Margaret in the background, offering silent coaching. "Then send me the old version," I said, "just to compare. Claire." The hesitation told me everything. He ended the call before I could finish. On the coffee table lay the morning mail among it. A glossy event brochure printed in navy and gold, the Nexus Edge Legacy Gala celebrating vision and future heritage. Heritage. Another word for rewriting history? I flipped through the brochure. Pages of sponsors, board members, family quotes. On page 5. A founder's timeline. I scanned for my name out of habit. It wasn't there, not even in the earliest years. When I coded the first client model and brokered our initial contracts. My name was replaced by Family Advisory Council. I sat back and exhaled slowly. The rebranding wasn't just public relations, it was structural, legal, generational. They weren't erasing me from photos. They were erasing me from ownership. The doorbell broke the stillness. A courier again. Another envelope. Same gold crest. Inside, a hard copy of the trust update with a handwritten note in Ethan's looping signature. Just sign it. Claire. This keeps things simple for everyone. Everyone. I looked at the reflection of the city on the glass wall, at the woman who used to believe simplicity was safe. Then I placed the paper next to last night's champagne glass and left it untouched. An hour later. Lydia called from her office. "Claire," she whispered, voice low. "You didn't hear this from me, but there's a new family advisor profile being added to the company's internal directory. Guess who's listed as external support for leadership image and transition, Margaret?" My stomach turned cold. "She's been consulting with our legal counsel for weeks," Lydia continued. "About a trust alignment process?" "Claire, I think they're formalizing something behind the scenes." "Realignment," I repeated, tasting the word. That's the second time I've heard it. "What does it mean?" Lydia asked. "It means they're preparing to erase me in permanent ink." When the call ended, I pulled open the old filing cabinet by my desk. Inside were binders of documents, contracts, invoices, partnership drafts. Every page bore a trace of me. Every number still aligned with my handwriting. Proof that I existed in the company's DNA, no matter how many PDFs they redlined. Outside. Rain began to fall thin lines across the glass, like code running backward somewhere. In a suite across the city, my husband was rewriting the next version of us, but this time, I was reading every line. It started with a message from Lydia's subject line, "Read this privately." No greeting, just an attached .zip file titled Trust Chain Amendment Log. I hesitated before opening it. The last time Lydia had sent me something labeled off record, it had nearly cost her her job. The file unfolded into a sequence of emails, internal correspondence between HR, legal, and the family office. The first one, dated 2 weeks earlier, was short and surgical from HR legal liaison to Whitmore Family Council subject trust realignment, spousal adjustment per directive from the board. Please remove non-essential spouse beneficiaries from visibility and documentation prior to the gala. My eyes tracked the phrase non-essential spouse beneficiaries. The second email followed within the same thread from Margaret Whitmore to Family Council. Ethan Whitmore. Proceed with final approval. Family Council has reviewed and supports the change. Optics require uniformity before announcement. Then, the one that made my chest tighten. From Ethan Whitmore to Family Office Legal Approved. Execute under current trust authority. E-sign for both trustees. Time sensitive. Underneath his name. The digital signature seal glowed in perfect blue. E. Whitmore for both trustees. Both trustees? That meant me. I stared at it until the letters blurred. The timestamp read 10:37 p.m. The same night, Ethan had asked me to review a quick event insurance update while we were watching a press stream on the sofa. I remembered the moment clearly, him sliding his tablet toward me, the stylus already hovering over the signature box, saying, "Just need this for coverage verification. You trust me." Right, I'd signed. One stroke. Then returned to my wine. That was the night he'd used my digital signature to sign away my status in the trust. The realization landed slow but heavy, like ice melting through fabric. I scrolled further down the thread. Attached was a scan of the cap table summary, a quiet document that said everything. My initials still appeared next to grantor on the original trust, but the amendment, the one Ethan had filed, was incomplete. No wet signature from me, no notary stamp. Legally, it shouldn't stand. But optics, as Margaret liked to say, could distort legality. At the bottom of Lydia's message was a single line, camera logs attached. Compare timestamps before you confront him. I opened the folder. Inside a security still from our living room camera, the system Ethan had insisted we keep for safety. Camera log confirmed it, 10:37 p.m., his tablet, my forged signature. That was all it took, 17 seconds to alter the foundation of a marriage and a company. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and exhaled through clenched teeth. Somewhere below, traffic murmured across wet pavement. When my phone vibrated, I already knew who it was. Lydia, delete everything after you read it. He doesn't know I saw the logs. HR was CC'd by mistake. I'm wiping the trail on my end. Me. Why risk it, Lydia? Because what they're doing isn't just PR. It's forgery with better lighting. Her words sat on the screen, blunt and perfect. I copied every file onto an encrypted drive, labeling it C. Whitmore, Och Personal Evidence. Then I powered down my laptop and walked to the window. Below. The Fairmont's rooftop shimmered with string lights. Workers were unloading floral installations, the same ones I'd ordered last year for the Series C dinner when Nexus Edge still felt like ours. My reflection looked calm. Too calm. I remembered the way Ethan used to call me his numbers whisperer. He'd once said I could make any spreadsheet sing. Now, those same numbers would become the harmony to his downfall. On the counter lay the Trust Amendment courier copy from the previous day. I placed it beside my phone and took a photo of both. The skyline blurred behind. A digital timestamp, another quiet weapon? Then, without thinking, I called Amira. She answered on the second ring, her voice low and direct. "Claire, you don't usually call this late. I need to confirm something," I said. If someone signs on behalf of both trustees electronically without physical consent, does that hold silent stretch before she replied? Not in Washington state. Dual authorization requires mutual authentication or notarization. Why I hesitated. Because I think my husband just used my trust authority as an event prop? Amira inhaled sharply. Do not confront him yet. Send me everything original trust. Amendment. Timestamps. I'll verify what's enforceable. And Claire, yes, stop signing anything electronic from now on. Even your grocery receipts. Her voice carried the kind of steel only experience grants. After we hung up, I returned to the couch and stared at the dark TV screen, where our reflections floated like strangers. The last remnants of the email thread glowed on my laptop. Execute before gala. Align all narratives. Optics first. Paperwork later. Optics first. I thought of Margaret's practiced smile, the press photos of Ethan shaking hands with men twice his age, the way my name had vanished one amendment at a time. It wasn't rage, I felt it was precision. I copied the files again, this time onto a flash drive the size of a thumbnail. Then I locked it inside the velvet box where I used to keep my wedding ring. Outside. The rain had stopped. The air carried the metallic scent of something about to break. And somewhere across town, Ethan was rehearsing his victory speech, unaware that his own signature had just written the first line of his undoing. Amira called just after sunrise. Her voice carried that particular blend of caffeine and outrage that only lawyers who've discovered malpractice can manage. Claire, I went to the escrow vault myself. Your husband's amendment doesn't hold. The original deed still names you as grantor and co-trustee. Clause 12.4 is explicit: any transfer or amendment made under misrepresentation of authorization renders the document void. My hands didn't shake. But the cup did. Nullifies the whole thing, Amira said. If we can prove it. If, I repeated, the smallest word in the sentence yet the heaviest one. She continued. The deed's still lodged in the original escrow file at Cascade Bank. They never received a verified update, which means Ethan's version only exists in digital circulation. A ghost amendment? A ghost amendment. It sounded poetic in a cruel way, something that existed everywhere except reality. When the call ended, I pulled the folder of files toward me. The trust chain, the e-sign log, the email thread all open on separate screens like windows into deceit. The DocuSign audit trail was meticulous IP addresses, timestamps, geolocation pings. I compared the digital fingerprint from Ethan's device that night to his earlier logins. Perfect match. The signing origin traced back to our own penthouse Wi-Fi network. At 10:37 p.m., he'd used my authorization token, 2 minutes later. A system note completed by secondary trustee auto proxy override enabled. Proxy override. My stomach turned. He'd built a technical shortcut and internal override only accessible to the trust administrator. Himself. Somewhere in the quiet hum of the fridge, the realization settled like a verdict. This wasn't oversight. It was design. By noon, Maya was waiting for me at our old cafe across from the market, a small place with chipped ceramic cups and no paparazzi. Her voice dropped as soon as I sat down. Claire, something's off. The rumor about the merger, it's accelerating. The announcement scheduled for tomorrow's gala. Who's merging with Nexus Edge Orion Systems? They specialize in corporate restructuring, shell management, legal laundering, that sort of thing. Word is, this merger will consolidate ownership, which is code for burying inconvenient shares. I sip my coffee to keep my expression neutral. So once the merger finalizes, your name disappears forever. She finished. Maya pulled a folded document from her bag, a leaked investor memo. The first page bore the Nexus Edge logo in gold. The tagline, Legacy Through Innovation. Line 3. All prior equity and trust designations to be reconciled under new entity structure. Effective post-merger signing. Ethan's repackaging you out of existence, Maya said softly, and everyone's calling it corporate evolution. I glanced out the window. It felt like watching my own obituary being decorated with roses. That afternoon, I crafted my test. It was simple, an email about something harmless, disguised as concern. From Claire Whitmore to Ethan Whitmore. Subject: Gala insurance policy. Hey, just confirming whether the coverage extension includes partners' travel. You mentioned we'd adjusted it last month, just making sure we're both listed. A small question, strategically phrased. If he replied promptly, he'd still be in control. If he ignored it, he was hiding something. Minutes passed, then hours. No reply. At 4:52 p.m., the read receipt popped. Opened on mobile device, and then nothing. I stared at the blinking cursor, waiting for the typing indicator that never came. Ghosted by my own husband. Again. I sent a second message, short and unthreatening. Just checking you saw this. Want to make sure we're covered? Still nothing? Instead, an automated reply arrived at 7:03 p.m. Ethan Whitmore is in final gala rehearsals and will respond after the event. A mechanical voice for a man who'd built a human empire on charm. I smiled without warmth. Perfect. Silence was better than confession. It was proof of fear. Amira texted again later that night. Claire, you were right to hold off. I pulled the escrow verification sheet. There's a procedural error, no notary stamp, no witness line, no timestamp cross-validation. That amendment isn't enforceable in any court. Keep collecting evidence quietly. We'll make our move after the gala. When his signature's freshest? Her phrasing "when his signature's freshest" sounded almost cinematic. I typed back, "Understood." I'll let him finish his performance. After that. I spent hours cross-referencing everything, trust PDFs, cap tables, signature keys. The deeper I went, the clearer it became the company's future, the trust's fortune, and Ethan's reputation all hinged on a forged document that couldn't survive scrutiny. All I needed was timing. By midnight. The penthouse lights reflected across the bay like twin cities, one made of glass, the other of lies. I poured a glass of wine and reopened the original trust deed, the one with our real signatures' ink slightly smudged where Ethan's hand had shaken. Clause 12.4 stared back at me in Amira's crisp red underline. Any amendment executed under misrepresentation, coercion, or digital substitution shall be considered void ab initio, void from the beginning. It meant everything he'd built on top of that fraud, the gala, the merger. The image was already cracked at the base. And cracks, in the right light, become entry points. I turned off the lights and let the city outside become my reflection. Tomorrow. The ballroom would shimmer with champagne and applause. But tonight, the foundation of Ethan's empire was already trembling quietly, invisibly, legally. The headline broke over breakfast. Nexus Edge co-founder takes voluntary step back to focus on philanthropy. My photo smiling. Serene appeared beside Ethan's, both of us frozen mid-laughter at some past event. Below. The caption read, "Ethan and Claire Whitmore remain amicable as they realign public roles for upcoming merger." I stared at the glossy lie. Sunlight spilling across the marble counter. Ethan had been late that day. I'd filled the silence by talking about community grants. Now. That same moment was being sold as proof of my graceful retreat. The article quoted Ethan verbatim from his brunch press conference at the museum courtyard. Claire and I made this joint decision months ago. She's passionate about using her expertise for good. Our family foundation's new focus will be education equity. She'll continue representing the Whitmore legacy outside the company as I steer Nexus Edge through this exciting merger. I could almost hear the applause that followed, perfectly timed, perfectly false. My phone buzzed endlessly with messages. Maya, Claire. This just dropped. Did you approve that quote, Amira, do not respond publicly? Meet me in my office, bring the trust copy. Lydia HR just got memo, all internal channels instructed to use phrase mutual step back. They're rewriting in real time. I didn't answer any of them. I just closed the laptop, poured another cup of coffee, and watched steam rise like a slow confession. Amira's office was small but fortress solid frosted glass, neat stacks of case files, the faint scent of bergamot tea. She slid a folder toward me as soon as I sat down. Claire. We found something hidden in the amendment metadata. She opened to a printed annex page, one I hadn't seen before. It was labeled in narrow italics Appendix C, Temporary Proxy Delegation Clause. Where did this come from, I asked. It was embedded in the encrypted PDF you sent me, Amira said. Invisible to basic viewers. You needed advanced permissions to extract it. My paralegal decrypted it this morning. The text was surgical, its language almost sterile. During the period of image realignment and until subsequent ratification by Family Council. All voting rights and trust decision authority vested in Co-Trustee C, Whitmore shall be temporarily delegated to Co-Trustee E. Whitmore for expediency in corporate proceedings. I read it twice. Then again. Temporarily delegated, I said slowly. Meaning he controls my votes. Exactly. Not just ownership optics actual voting power, enough to pass merger approval without your consent. Amira pointed to a timestamp. Insert it at 10:38 p.m., 1 minute after your forged signature. I leaned back, pressing my palms flat against the desk to keep myself anchored. So it's not just erasure, it's theft. Legal theft, Amira said quietly. Elegant and deniable. With your signature appearing legitimate, the clause makes him proxy controller of your equity. Once the merger finalizes, new share structures will render the trust obsolete. By the time you contest it, The assets will already be diluted. A silence thickened between us, filled with the muffled hum of city traffic beyond the glass. Amira folded her hands. Claire, he's not just cutting you out of a narrative. He's monetizing your absence. That afternoon, Maya stormed into my apartment still wearing her press badge, the smell of roasted coffee and newsroom adrenaline clinging to her coat. I was at the brunch, she said, pacing. He played the perfect act soft smile, hand on heart. Told everyone you were launching a foundation. Investors loved it. The stories everywhere, Forbes, Seattle Tech Weekly, even the Journal. But here's the kicker. She tossed a glossy event brochure onto the table. The headline read, Nexus Edge. Orion Merger Celebration Gala tomorrow. Fairmont Museum. Board vote scheduled for 9 p.m., Maya said. And guess what? Every voting share except Year's already confirmed in favor, meaning he'll walk in. Flash your proxy authorization and finalize the deal under the family's blessing. I picked up the brochure. Across the back page was Ethan's quote in cursive gold, Legacy isn't inherited, it's curated. I almost laughed. He's curating mine right out of existence. Maya's eyes burned. So what's next? Press exposure? Not yet. I turned toward the window, the harbor beyond glittering with afternoon light. The gala banners were already being raised at the museum across the water, navy silk with gold lettering. They fluttered like warning flags. Let him finish the show, I said. Every empire deserves its final applause before the audit. That evening, Amira sent another message. Confirmed Clause 12.4 still overrides any fraudulent proxy delegation. Misrepresentation voids subsequent authority. We can freeze the merger if we act before filing goes public. She attached a screenshot of the relevant passage. Highlighted in crimson, any instrument executed through deception or electronic substitution shall be rendered void, and all powers derived therefrom cease immediately. The legal ground was clear, but the timing wasn't. I needed Ethan to use the forged authority first. That's when the violation would crystallize. I typed a calm reply. Let him sign. We'll file after. Maya, reading over my shoulder, looked horrified. You're letting him walk into a multi-million-dollar fraud? Yes, I said, closing the laptop. Because once he does, the evidence stops being theoretical. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You really are the quiet kind of dangerous. I smiled faintly. It's the only kind that lasts. Outside. The city prepared for celebration. Fireworks trucks rolled toward the waterfront. String lights flickered across the museum terrace. The world would wake up tomorrow to headlines about visionary leadership and historic consolidation. But under all that golden glass, the documents told another story, one that began at 10:37 p.m., with a forged signature and a clause buried like a fuse. And tomorrow night, that fuse would finally burn to light. The museum shimmered like a cathedral of ambition. Chandeliers floated beneath vaulted glass ceilings. Champagne whispered in flutes. At the center of it all, Ethan stood beneath the spotlight, tuxedo flawless, smile weaponized. Cameras flashed. The Nexus Edge Orion Merger Gala had begun, behind him. The screen projected the headline he'd waited months to unveil, the future of integration. Applause rolled through the hall, smooth as silk. The board members sat in the front row, Margaret Whitmore poised beside them, pearls gleaming under the lights. Her expression was pure triumph. Ethan raised his glass. Tonight, we celebrate not just innovation, but legacy, he said, his voice perfectly modulated for the microphones. Nexus Edge has always been a family endeavor fueled by trust, by vision, by unity. The irony was so thick I could have carved it, from the back of the hall. Amira and I stood side by side, almost invisible among the crowd of executives and donors. My dress was simple charcoal silk. No jewelry, no performance. The paper folder in my hand was the only accessory that mattered. Amira leaned close. Bank certification is ready. The notary seal's visible on page 1. Are you sure you want to do this publicly? I exhaled slowly. He built the narrative in public. That's where it breaks. Ethan was finishing his speech now. the crescendo building toward applause. And so, with unanimous consent, "Not quite unanimous," I said, stepping forward. The microphone caught my voice perfectly. Heads turned. The music faltered. Ethan froze, mid-sentence, champagne flute halfway to his lips. "Claire." His tone was light, almost amused, the way men sound when they still believe they control the room. "Darling, this is hardly the time." "Oh, I think it's exactly the time," I said, crossing the stage. My heels clicked like a countdown against marble. The camera swiveled, the audience murmured. I stopped beside him, holding the folder like a contract ready for inspection. "Since you mentioned unity," I continued, "I thought it might help the board to review the actual legal foundation of that unity." Ethan's smile didn't waver, but the muscle in his jaw twitched. "Whatever this is." "We can discuss privately Clause 12.4, I said, unfolding the first page. "Executed at Cascade Bank, witnessed, notarized, and stored in escrow. It states, and I quote, 'Any amendment executed under misrepresentation, coercion, or digital substitution shall be rendered void ab initio.'" The words carried cleanly through the microphone. The crowd stilled. I turned toward the audience. "For those unfamiliar with Latin," I said softly, "it means void from the beginning." Amira stepped forward, handing a second document to the board chair. "Bank certification," she said crisply, "filed this morning, confirms no valid amendment exists, no notarization, no wet signature, and a time-stamped record of unauthorized electronic substitution by Mr. Whitmore at 10:37 p.m. on the night in question." A ripple went through the room murmurs, the shuffle of expensive shoes on marble. Someone's champagne glass hit the floor with a crystalline crack. Ethan's face drained of color. "This is outrageous," he snapped. "You forged this stunt." "Actually," I said, pulling a smaller envelope from the folder, "this next part might interest you." It was the proxy letter I'd written last year, the insurance policy Amira had advised me to draft after the first whispers of realignment. I'd forgotten it until last week. Buried among our estate papers. I held it up for the lights to catch the signature Ethan's, mine, and the corporate seal. "According to this," I said evenly, "in the event of any dispute regarding proxy validity or trustee authority, all delegated voting rights revert to the originating grantor temporarily. That would be me." Gasps rolled through the crowd like wind through glass. The board's in-house counsel, an older man with Rose, from his chair, scanning the papers Amira handed him, after a long pause. He looked up and cleared his throat. "She's correct," he said quietly into his mic. "The reversion clause predates the amendment and overrides it. Mrs. Mike. Whitmore retains full voting control until the dispute is settled." Silence. Not stunned silence the heavy. Electric kind that redefines a room. Margaret Whitmore stood rigid in the front row, her hand frozen around her pearls, eyes wide and unblinking. Helena Kraus, the European investor, leaned forward slightly, the faintest smile ghosting across her lips, a mixture of admiration and relief. Ethan tried to recover, stepping toward me. "Claire, you're humiliating yourself." "This is a family matter, no," I said, meeting his gaze. "You made it a corporate one when you forged my name." I turned to the audience, calm, steady. "You wanted optics," I said softly. "Here's transparency." The orchestra froze, bows suspended midair. Ethan's voice dropped, desperate now. "You don't understand what you've done." "The merger is frozen?" Amira interjected. "Pending investigation of fraudulent execution under Washington trust law. Effective immediately." The room erupted not with applause, but with whispers. Phones buzzing. The rustle of status rearranging itself. I looked at Ethan one last time. His face was all edges now, stripped of performance. For a man who'd built his empire on control, he suddenly looked small beneath the chandeliers. I closed the folder, placed it on the podium, and stepped back from the microphone. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was decisive, and in that stillness, the empire he'd forged from lies began to crack audibly, publicly, irreversibly. The Pacific Coast didn't ask questions. It just kept breathing slow, relentless, indifferent. By the time I reached the small house I'd rented near Cannon Beach, the wind had stripped the city noise from my mind. I dropped my bag by the door and watched the tide swallow the horizon, for the first time in months. There were no reporters, no champagne, no stage lights, only the cold, precise silence of consequence. The day after the gala, headlines had split cleanly down the middle. The Journal ran merger halted amid legal irregularities, but tabloids preferred drama billionaire wife crashes husband's party with legal bombshell. I didn't read them. I didn't need to. I had no interest in fighting a public fire. Amira had said it best that morning over the phone. We don't scorch the earth, Claire. We stabilize it. Then we build on the ashes properly. So we began. The first step was paperwork, the quiet kind that changes worlds. Amira filed a petition to restore original trust in the King County Court. The petition cited Clause 12.4 as the governing standard, requesting immediate invalidation of the amendment and reinstatement of all original trustee rights. Attached was the bank certification, the proxy reversion letter, and, most crucially, a motion for temporary asset freeze on any accounts tied to the fraudulent signature, not punitive, Amira reminded the clerk, her tone smooth as glass, protective. We're simply preserving the assets until the trust's validity is confirmed, within 48 hours. The judge signed the interim order. Every transfer Ethan had initiated post-merger announcement consulting fees. PR retainers. And that infamous image optimization fund was frozen pending review. It wasn't revenge, it was accountability, when the court notice went live. Ethan's attorney released a statement claiming cooperation and transparency, but the silence from the boardroom said otherwise. That's when Helena Kraus called. Her accent carried the crispness of German boardrooms and the restraint of someone who rarely wasted words. Mrs. Wedishi, oh. Whitmore, she began. Or should I say Ms.? Now Claire is fine. Then, Claire, she said, the board met this morning. I made sure the ethics committee reviewed every document Amira sent. We've confirmed the forgery, and the investors are concerned. The family advisory model Margaret pushed is no longer sustainable. That's an elegant way to say it's rotten, I said quietly. Helena's small laugh was the sound of diplomacy breaking just enough to be human. You could say that. Which is why I want you to step in as proxy representative for your own shares and as interim board voice for governance stabilization. I blinked. You're asking me to rejoin the company, no? She corrected gently. I'm asking you to steady it, publicly. We'll say you're ensuring compliance during the transition, privately. It will remind everyone where the backbone of Nexus Edge truly came from. I let that sink in. The ocean roared beyond the window, for years. I'd watched men like Ethan rewrite stories. Now, I had the chance to restore one not with vengeance, but with structure. I'll do it, I said, but only if there's an ethics audit on the entire family advisory arrangement. I want everything Margaret touched on record. Helena didn't hesitate. Already authorized, in the days that followed. Amira and I worked from opposite ends of the coast, she from her Seattle office, I from a weathered desk overlooking the sea. Our communication was all efficiency and understatement. Subject NDA modification, body filed under Limited Disclosure Clause 7B. You may now speak publicly about your role in the company's founding and financial architecture, provided all statements are factual and verifiable. The NDA lift, it was narrow but powerful. For years, I'd been muzzled by confidential image agreements that kept me from acknowledging my technical and strategic contributions. Now, I could finally state the truth in depositions, in board transcripts, in interviews if I chose. I didn't give interviews, but I did send one letter. It went to every major investor who'd ever believed the self-made CEO mythology, while public narratives may shift. I wrote, Truth leaves a paper trail. Attached are excerpts of the 2015 strategy deck, the client acquisition roadmap, and the initial trust structure bearing both our signatures. My intent is not retribution, but restoration of record. Every page was time-stamped, every claim supported. I didn't accuse, I simply documented, and that, more than any scandal, unsettled them most. One evening, Helena called again from Zurich. The ethics audit had begun. Margaret's communications were being reviewed, her family advisory expenses itemized. Early findings suggested funds misallocated into PR accounts that overlapped with Ethan's personal image campaigns. Poetic. Isn't it? Helena said dryly. He built his empire on the illusion of integrity, and now integrity is the very thing auditing him. I smiled, staring out at the endless gray-blue horizon, poetic, but predictable. Will you attend the next board session? She asked. Yes, I said. Not to fight. To finalize. Revenge didn't have to scream. Sometimes it could whisper through filings, clauses, and signatures that quietly rebalanced power in the stillness between waves. I thought of Ethan somewhere in the city, pacing, calling lawyers, rewriting apologies that would never sound sincere. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger, just certainty. Stabilize. Don't scorch. It was the kind of revenge that left the world intact, but rearranged the truth inside it. The boardroom smelled like an old money. The morning light fractured through the tall windows of the Nexus Edge headquarters, cutting clean lines across the marble floor. Cameras weren't allowed this time, just quiet power. Expensive pens. And the tension of people who'd suddenly realized which side of history they might land on. At the head of the table, Ethan sat stiff in his tailored navy suit, expression neutralized into something corporate and hollow. Margaret was beside him, pearls tight against her throat, eyes glassy from a sleepless night. Across the table sat Helena Kraus, Amira, and a handful of silent executives who were about to witness a shift they'd never anticipated. I took my seat, for the first time. It was at the center of the table, not behind, not beside, center. Amira slid the folder toward me. All filings confirmed. Claire, she whispered, the petition was accepted. You're officially acting proxy until the trust restoration is finalized. Ethan leaned forward slightly, his voice even. This is unnecessary. We're in the middle of negotiation with Orion. If you freeze the process now, you'll tank the valuation. I met his gaze without flinching. You tanked it the night you forged my name. Helena adjusted her glasses and nodded toward me. Proceed. Miss Whitmore, you hold the floor. I stood, unfolding a sheet of paper that bore both seals mine and the court's. By authority of the reversion proxy under Clause 12.4, I said, my voice clear and unhurried. I am casting my reinstated vote to suspend all executive decision-making powers of Mr. Ethan Whitmore until the completion of the ongoing ethics and trust investigation. A low murmur ran through the room like static. One of the board attorneys spoke softly into the microphone. Noted for record. Motion to confirm suspension passed by proxy authority. Ethan's jaw flexed. You're sidelining me from my own company now, I said gently. I'm restoring it to what we built before ambition rewrote the bylaws. He looked away first. Next motion, appointment of interim COO. I continued. I turned to Lydia, HR Director, loyal even when silence had been safer. She sat 3 chairs down, eyes wide, unsure if she should meet mine. Effective immediately, I said. Ms. Lydia Chen will serve as interim Chief Operating Officer, pending board confirmation. She'll oversee all technical divisions and personnel continuity through the transition. Helena seconded it without hesitation. Agreed. Stability is our priority. There was a short pause before the gavel struck the table. Motion approved. Lydia's breath caught. Claire, thank you. You earned it, I said simply. Then came the final action, the one that would truly rewrite the company's fate. The Nexus Edge Orion merger, I said, turning to the board's corporate counsel, is hereby suspended. Preliminary review suggests valuation irregularities and potential conflicts of interest tied to the Image Realignment Fund. To ensure transparency, a new data room will open within 10 days, audited independently. All proprietary code and contract documentation will be scrubbed for authenticity before further negotiations proceed. The room went very still. One of the investors whispered, That's unprecedented. So was falsifying a co-trustee's identity. Helena replied coolly, Precedent is what we make of it. Amira handed me a final form. You'll need to sign for record. Claire. I did. Ink met paper, the sound small, deliberate, irreversible. The deed was done. The meeting adjourned under a hush that felt almost reverent as people gathered their files. I saw Ethan rise slowly, every movement restrained. He didn't look angry, just emptied, like a man realizing the room no longer translated his authority. "Claire," he said quietly as I passed. "Is this revenge?" I stopped. The sunlight struck the side of his face, highlighting how tired he looked, years of performance condensed into exhaustion. "No," I said. "This is restoration?" For a second, he almost smiled. Then he nodded once and walked out, leaving his mother clutching her pearls like a lifeline. By evening, statements had gone out to the press, not dramatic ones, just facts effective immediately. Nexus Edge has appointed interim leadership to ensure compliance and transparency. The board confirms cooperation with the ongoing ethics review. No names, no scandal, just truth dressed in professionalism. Margaret's assistant called later that night. Her voice trembled slightly as she read the message Margaret had requested be relayed. "The family hopes for a resolution that preserves dignity on all sides. Mrs. Whitmore Sr. extends an invitation to discuss a private settlement." I thanked her, then drafted my reply. It wasn't angry or sentimental, just clean. "Please inform Mrs. Whitmore that the best way to preserve dignity is to practice it. The matter's closed, no settlement required." Before sending it, I reread it once, ensuring there was no cruelty, only clarity. Then I hit send. A week later, the company lobby displayed a new exhibit, Foundations of Nexus Edge. It was a modest glass case illuminated by soft light. Inside, mounted on velvet, lay the original trust deed, the document that had once bound two signatures together in shared creation. One belonged to Ethan, the other, mine unforged, ink thick and imperfect, undeniably human. A small brass plaque below read, "The foundation of innovation is integrity. Signed and restored, 2015. Visitors paused there often, I heard. Some saw it as a symbol of resilience. Others, of justice done quietly. For me, it was neither. It was closure, the proof that paper could outlast pride. As I left the building for the last time, I caught my reflection in the glass door's calm, steady, unrecognizable from the woman who'd once measured her worth in proximity to someone else's success. Justice hadn't required shouting, only precision. And now, I realized something vital. Revenge wasn't about destroying what hurt you. It was about reclaiming what you built and writing your name back where it always belonged. 6 months later, the Seattle skyline looked different, not because it had changed, but because I finally saw it from a place that was mine. The brass plate on the glass door read, "Whitmore Advisory," underneath, in smaller lettering, "Strategic Trusts. Prenups and proxy governance for founders and families." The logo, a stylized pen nib balanced on a scale, had been Maya's idea. "You turned paper into justice," she'd said. "Might as well make that your trademark." Inside, the office was small but luminous, pale oak desks, and a single framed photo on the far side, a candid shot of the Oregon coast at dawn. I'd taken it the week after everything collapsed. It reminded me what rebuilding could look like when silence becomes strength. Clients came quietly at first. Women who'd signed things they hadn't fully understood. Founders who'd trusted husbands, partners, investors. Then, word spread. Within 3 months, I was hosting Read Your Paper workshops every Saturday morning, a small circle of women around coffee cups and highlighters, dissecting clauses the way surgeons study anatomy. Clause 9.3. Upon dissolution of marriage, discretionary interest shall terminate unless otherwise specified. I pause and look up. Translation. You lose your equity the moment you lose your patience. Laughter, then realization, then resolve. Less performance, more purpose. Don't wait for someone else to protect your worth. I tell them, make your own clause. That line became our unofficial motto. Maya turned it into a hashtag. Helena funded a scholarship for underrepresented founders. Lydia became my first full-time operations director. We weren't a law firm, we were a paper-literate movement. On a gray Tuesday in late spring, Amira stopped by unannounced, carrying a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc and her usual expression, part serenity, part secret. "Office looks good," she said, scanning the walls. "I like that you kept it minimalist. Legal clarity deserves space." I smiled. "You sound like a commercial, occupational hazard." We toasted quietly. "Professionally?" Then she reached into her leather portfolio and slid an envelope across the table. Cream stock. Embossed crest? My name written in someone else's careful handwriting. I didn't need to open it to guess. Ethan's engagement announcement. The photograph was predictable him in an impeccably cut tuxedo, his fiancée an heiress. By the family name in couture white, posing in front of a country estate. The caption read, "A Union of Heritage and Innovation." Attached was a folded legal document labeled Prenuptial Agreement Draft. I raised an eyebrow. You're representing them? Amira didn't flinch. I'm representing her. She requested me after reading about your case. She wanted transparency, no hidden proxies, no silent clauses. Full disclosure before vows. I read the first page. The clauses were clean, balanced, mutual asset protection, no predatory language. Clause 11 even stipulated that any future trust would require dual wet signatures for amendment, my favorite phrase. Reborn. Impeccable work, I said. Setting the paper down. Thank you, Amira replied evenly. You taught me to triple read. We sat in silence for a long moment, the hum of the city filtering through the windows. Finally, I smiled, not the bitter kind. Just quiet recognition. At least he finally reads the fine print. Amira's mouth curved slightly. Progress takes strange forms. The question lingered, had she changed sides, or simply honored her craft. But maybe that was the point. Justice wasn't about sides. It was about structure. Later that night, I walked through the office alone. The lights of the harbor glowed like constellations reflected in glass. I paused before the framed trust deed that hung near my desk, the original, authenticated copy. Its edges had yellowed slightly, but the ink still shone, two signatures side by side, not erased, not rewritten, just real. For a long moment. I traced the embossed seal with my fingertips and whispered the lesson that had carried me here. Paper doesn't protect people. People protect themselves through paper. The next morning, my inbox held an unfamiliar subject line, Help, HOA bylaw nightmare. The sender was anonymous. The body of the email was short, typed in all lowercase as if written in panic. Our board just passed a bylaw to seize my property if I don't repaint in their approved palette. I'm a widow. They're saying I missed the vote. I didn't even get notified. I think they forged my proxy. I saw your video. I need a her clause. I stared at the message, a slow smile forming. Outside. The city woke up ferries cutting through the bay, sun catching on the courthouse dome. My reflection in the glass looked calm, ready. Another story was beginning. Would you choose forgiveness or revenge if the law was on your side? Tell me in the comments.